That footage is from the explosion that occurred on the Beirut port on the 4th of August 2020. A warehouse storing over 2,700 tons of ammonium nitrate was identified as the possible source of the blast. However, what led to it being set ablaze is still not clear. According to the current Prime Minister Hassan Diab, the ammonium nitrate had been stored for 6 years at the warehouse in the Beirut port without any safety measures, endangering the safety of the citizens. This is not the first incident where the overall safety of the citizens have been risked. Lebanon has been the center of turmoil for a long time now, suffering through a civil war and an occupation of their southern borders by Israel. Following the withdrawal of Israeli forces by the early 2000s, the country started facing stifling internal issues like a falling economy, corruption, along with a series of assassinations of several prime ministers. Lebanon has been facing crisis after crisis ever since. Ara Asaf, a Lebanese activist, summed it up with these words in the hours after the explosion. They killed us financially, they killed us economically, they killed us physically, they killed us morally, they killed us chemically. There's not one form of debt they haven't used with us. Damn our political class. As per the report by transparency.org in December 2019, Lebanese citizens report the highest perceptions and experiences of corruption across all 6 countries in question. Bribery, electoral corruption, and inefficient reporting mechanisms are some of the main concerns. 87% of citizens in Lebanon think their government is not doing enough to tackle corruption, which is the highest in the region. The country also has the highest overall bribery rate, which is 41%, and wasta, the use of personal connections rate, the 54% level. Vote buying is also highest in Lebanon at a 47% rate. 2019 and 2020 protest, also known as the October Revolution, saw Lebanese citizens taking to the streets. What started off as protests against the government's plans to tax internet mobile phone messages is believed to be fueled by years of corruption and mismanagement by the government. As a result of the protest, Prime Minister Saad Hariri tendered his resignation, plunging the country into a political crisis. All this brings us to the economic crisis of the country that has been labeled the worst economic crisis in modern history. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic, the World Bank projected that 45% of the people in Lebanon would be below the poverty line. The current economic crisis of the country can be attributed to the free fall of its currency. Since 1997, the Lebanese Central Bank has artificially pegged US dollars at 1507 lira. That means the value of $1 is equal to 1507 lira. Until early last year, anything that cost $2 could be paid in terms of $2 or the equivalent amount in lira, which would have been 3014 lira. That was until last September, when the lira lost its value by 85 to 90%. The exchange rate on the streets skyrocketed to 9,500 to 10,000 lira to the dollar. Yet the government rate remains the same. But almost no one can have access to that rate apart from the corrupt oligarchs and politicians, of course. With unemployment rising at alarming rate and annual inflation levels surging to an astonishing 89.74% in June 2020, the country is also facing a hunger crisis. According to the recent UN report, by the end of April, over half of the country was struggling to put the most basic produce on the table, as food prices had risen by 56% since October. Dr. Kulertz, a professor at the American University of Beirut, stated that Lebanon needs around $500 million per year for food imports, particularly as only 13% of its land is arable. Further, he said, if you do the math, Lebanon can only feed around 130,000 people per year. The food crisis needs foreign intervention. It is a lot cheaper to save this country than it will be to allow a country that has done Europe a service by hosting refugees to collapse. All this has been made even worse by the 2 explosions causing extreme damage to the major port of Lebanon. It is a sad fact, but we would have never batted an eye towards the crisis in Lebanon if it weren't for the explosions. Even sadder is the fact that there are many other countries that are suffering from the same crisis. And the world is waiting for something even more catastrophic to come to their aid.